Make sure you look grateful when we surprise you. My sister snorted through the receiver, unaware I was listening on the other line. Dad's voice broke in flat, parched. She'll smile or she's gone. That's all. Mom gave a laugh. Perfect. Everyone will get to watch. A small, shivery breath caught beneath my ribs. My hands went icy, like I'd dunked them in sleet water. I thought of every time I'd scrub pans while they cheered for someone else. Each moment my name was decoration, never identity. The ache of it clenched down in my jaw, the sort that forces your teeth together until bite pressure is the only thing keeping you intact. Hi, I'm Haven Lark. I don't tell stories to be believed. I tell them so they're felt. 1 week before Christmas, I overheard my family plotting to shame me in front of everyone, then cut me loose. So I adjusted my strategy. I moved soundless, like a hand flicking off a switch. Deliveries rerouted. Midnight phone calls. One short list of what I owed. A longer one of what they owed me. On December 24th, Mom phoned. Her voice dipped in sugar. Where are you? I laughed, quiet and hollow. Don't wait for me. Or the food. In the kitchen, the clock ticked like tiny mallets. Outside, the air carried chimney smoke and citrus peels. I cracked the window and let the cold climb inside. It steadied me. A life can be measured by what you learn to swallow. I was finished swallowing. They wanted a stage. They'd crafted it carefully. Strands of warm bulbs, polished place settings, a microphone ready to spark as the jokes landed. The act, my sister's, was love wrapped up as a roast, ending as rejection disguised as rules. They overlooked one thing. The girl who fetched napkins also knew where the invoices lived. I slipped my phone down, pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, and counted the rhythm. Controlled beats like a muted drum. Another call. Dad ignored. Aunt texted, at least bring the cranberry tart. A smile broke sideways on my lips. The tart was already at the shelter nearby. So were the trays labeled with place cards. Salmon, Lee's table. Roast, head table. Every tag kindness, diverted. Snow began to fall in a hush, white static softening the night. For the first time in years, I heard my own voice inside me. I zipped my coat, lifted an unmarked envelope, and stepped outside toward the one corner of that house they would never expect me to face. The night air cut sharp against my cheeks, yet it felt cleaner than anything lingering indoors. I walked fast, boots sinking in the snow, the envelope pressed to my palm like something burning alive. Inside, receipts. Copies of every invoice, every catering payment, every dollar I'd poured into their so-called family Christmas. I carried them the way a hand carries a match before striking it. Through frost-laced trees, their house glowed like a set piece. Cars lined the street, exhaust curling skyward, muffling the laughter spilling through open windows. I stopped there in the shadows, listening. Hidden. My sister's voice cut through the air, loud and sugary, a brightness anyone could tell was fake. She was late, as usual. Just wait until you hear what we've got lined up for her. The room broke out in laughter. I let the sound wash over me, let it steady my steps, and then harden into resolve. I headed toward the side entrance, the door no guest would ever walk through. The service door I used to slip in and out with trays, invisible. My old key slid in easily. Naturally it worked. No one ever bothered changing a lock for the dutiful girl they assumed would never disobey. Inside, warmth enveloped me, carrying the faint bite of cinnamon candles. My heartbeat matched the clatter of glasses, just beyond. The dining room gleamed, staged like a page torn from a glossy magazine. Polished cutlery, mountains of shiny wrapped gifts piled under the tree. My family sparkled there, clothed in red and gold. Mom lifted her hand. Quiet fell. When she finally arrives, we'll raise our glasses. Her smile was the same sharp-edged one that used to cut me down when I was 10. I lingered at the doorway, unseen, watching them. They were rehearsing cruelty, as if it were a play. That's when I understood. Tonight wasn't about outshouting them. I just had to let their carefully built stage collapse on its own. The envelope tightened in my grip as I stepped forward, a floorboard groaning under my boot. Head swiveled at once. My sister's smirk faltered halfway. The silence dropped heavy and sudden, like the moment right before a chandelier comes crashing down. Every gaze fixed on me, spell broken. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch until someone shifted uneasily in their chair. My sister was first to break. Her voice shot high, brimming with smugness, like someone already sure of her victory. Well, look who finally decided to show. She curled her lip. Don't worry, folks, we saved the best punchline for last. A few cousins gave strained laughs, waiting to see if they should go further. But the way I stood there, still in my coat, snow dripping off my boots, stifled them. I tilted my head. Funny, I murmured. That's exactly why I came. Dad's forehead creased. What's that supposed to mean? His voice carried the old authority, but I caught the twitch in his jaw. I placed the envelope on the nearest table, sliding it until it rested against Mom's champagne glass. Every catering order, every down payment, my money not yours. The receipts are all there. Tonight's feast? It's already been served somewhere else. Hope you came hungry for leftovers. A ripple of unease moved through the room. Mom's fingers shook as she drew the papers halfway out. My aunt leaned in, whispering before gasping. My sister let out a brittle laugh that cracked in the middle. You're bluffing. She's bluffing. But the truth sat there plainly, stamped in numbers and signatures. The room didn't require me to explain further. Silence did the work, thickening, spreading, heavy as spilled wine seeping across a tablecloth. I stepped closer, the tree's glow catching half my face, leaving the other side swallowed in shadow. You wanted a stage, and you built one. But the final line doesn't belong to me. It belongs to you. My cousin let out an uneasy cough. Another chair creaked as someone shifted, the air thickening. The balance of power slid away from its usual anchor at the center of the table. That's when the doorbell broke through, a sharp, reverberating chime. Every head whipped toward the sound, eyes flickering with almost desperate relief, as if an unexpected guest might save them from what I'd just laid bare. But I already knew who stood outside. The bell rang again, longer, more insistent, until my sister snapped, "Somebody answer that." One of my cousins jumped up, shoes squeaking across the polished floor. The door swung open, and icy December air rushed in along with three men bundled in dark overcoats, arms stacked with boxes marked by a logo unfamiliar to anyone seated at the table. "Delivery for the Lark family," one of them announced, his voice steady, rehearsed. Confusion spread through the room like smoke. Dad pushed back his chair, puffing out his chest, trying to reclaim authority. We didn't order anything. Unbothered, one man placed a box right in the center of the dining table, smashing into my mother's carefully arranged poinsettias and candles. "This is prepaid. Signed for by Haven Lark." Every gaze shot toward me. I met them all without a blink. Slowly, I peeled off my gloves, tugging each finger free with deliberate precision, stretching out the silence until it burned. Mom's voice cracked. "What is this?" "Your Christmas dinner," I answered. "Or what's left of it." Her face tightened. "Everything you believe belonged to you has been redirected. These," I tapped the closest box, "are care packages. Tonight, the shelters will dine like royalty." Gasps broke around the table. My aunt clapped a hand over her mouth. A cousin whispered something about the salmon. My sister flushed white, then red, then white again. Dad's fist crashed against the table, rattling the glasses. "You ungrateful child." No, my reply cut through the room, sharper and colder than his fury. Not ungrateful, just unpaid, unnoticed, unwanted, until the chores stacked too high. I swept my gaze across the table, catching each face as their curiosity soured into discomfort. "You aim to humiliate me in front of them all. But take another look. The shame in this room doesn't belong to me." The men in coats tipped their hats and stepped back into the whirling snow. The front door shut with a heavy click, and silence froze the space. The crushed candles smoldered faintly, their extinguished scent clinging to the edges of the room. My family's eyes stayed locked onto the unopened box, as if it were a coffin resting on the table. I let the weight of that moment linger. Then, slow and deliberate, I reached into my pocket and drew out a folded card they hadn't seen. I set it down in front of my sister, face down. Her fingers hovered over it, hesitant, for the first time in her life. This sister of mine, who had always shredded wrapping paper like an impatient queen tearing into treasure, now acted as though a single touch might burn her. Around us, the guests leaned in, whispers hissing like restless snakes. Finally, she flipped the card open. The blood drained from her face. This can't be real. Oh, it's real, I murmured, my tone calm but unwavering. Every bill, every receipt, every charge I let slide while you played royalty. All the cards, you're out of them. I said the accounts were closed, each word falling slowly, like icicles giving way to warmth. Frozen stillness, then a rustle, voices swelling louder. One uncle squinted at the page, then shifted his gaze to her. Hold on. The wedding fund, it's gone. My sister's throat tightened as she swallowed hard. She tried to curl her fear into laughter, but the sound broke halfway out. She's bluffing. She's just envious. I only shook my head. Check your phone. Try making a payment tomorrow. Or better yet, call the florist who rang me this morning. Her fingers trembled as she dug through her clutch, tugging out her phone. The blue-white glow lit her features. One glance, and her lips parted in a shattered, breathless gasp. Around the table, eyes instantly widened. She wasn't faking. Neither was I. Mom gripped Dad's arm, sharp panic in her voice. You let her. No. I broke in, boots striking against the wooden floor as I stepped forward. You made me. Years stuck in the corner. Years pretending crumbs were meals. Tonight was meant to humiliate me. All I did was turn the mirror on you. The atmosphere shifted completely. Guests who'd come expecting a night of amusement now sat frozen, unease flickering in their gaze. Some even looked at me without pity, but with something closer to respect. My sister's phone slipped from her palm and cracked against the floor, the sound slicing through the still silence. Into that breathless pause, I murmured just loud enough, Merry Christmas. Then I turned away, toward the staircase, because what came next wasn't at the table. It was upstairs. The steps creaked beneath my boots, each one echoing louder than the last. Behind me, chaos stirred, Mom calling my name, Dad barking at me to come back right now. And yet no one followed. Cowardice, or pride, glued them to their chairs. The hallway smelled faintly of pine and old polish. Family portraits lined both sides, rows of grinning faces in matching sweaters, a gallery of fabrications. At the end stood my room, still painted in the pale lavender I'd begged for at 12. I pushed the door open. Everything sat untouched, staged like an exhibit. Trophies, books, even the cracked snow globe I'd insisted on keeping. Preserved as though time had stopped, as though they never allowed me to grow beyond the version they approved of. But beneath the bed still rested the small lockbox no one ever thought to notice. The key turned without resistance. Inside, stacked neatly, were sheets of paper, not bills this time, not flimsy receipts, but ownership deeds, company shares. I had been buying them quietly, year after year, with money they never cared to ask about. They called me the odd one out. All the while, I became the shadow partner they never acknowledged. Running my thumb over the embossed seal, my heartbeat remained steady. Downstairs, their laughter had soured, thin, uneasy. They thought the damage stopped at dinner. They didn't know the foundation itself already belonged to me. Then, the faint tread of footsteps at the base of the staircase. Hesitant, light. My sister's voice rose, frail and trembling now. Haven, what are you doing up there? I slid the papers into my coat pocket and stepped into the hallway once again. The tree lights. Downstairs, the glow from the tree wavered, throwing warped shadows that stretched across the wall. I'm only claiming what was always mine, I called out, my voice calm, almost tender. A pause. Her reply came back in a hushed breath, jagged at the edges of disbelief. You can't. You wouldn't. But she already knew. She had always known the truth. I was quieter, not weaker. I stepped down carefully, one stair at a time, the thick weight of the papers pressing in my pocket, my last move waiting. And this time, it wasn't their silence shadowing me, it followed in my wake. By the time I reached the final step, the living room was different. The laughter had drained away, replaced by uneasy murmurs, the kind that twist and coil when everyone realizes a story is veering off the script they'd imagined. My parents stood in the center, regal but stranded, crowns of authority crumbling. My sister hovered near the table, pale, transfixed by the shape in my coat pocket as if she could already see the edges of the papers burning through. I crossed the space slowly, deliberately. Eyes followed every movement. The tree lights flickered again, painting golden rings on the walls, but the room's warmth had already seeped out. Dad broke first, his words taut, almost snapping. "This is family business, Haven. You don't drag it out in front of guests." I let the warning fall between us. Empty. "Exactly," I replied. "Family business." And with that, I pulled the papers free, spreading them across the table, right on top of the unopened box. "I own more of this than you ever cared to notice." Gasps rippled outward. Someone rose for a better view. My mother's hand shook against her necklace, knuckles bone white. My aunt whispered, "Chaz, is this true?" Color surged in my father's cheeks. "Those are forgeries. They're notarized." I cut him off, crisp and steady. "Every fraction accounted for. While you mocked me, I invested. While you schemed to force me out, I was already inside." My sister's voice cracked like glass. "Why? Why would you do this?" I looked at her, no hatred there, only something darker, sharper. "Because you never saw me. You only saw how I could serve you. Tonight was meant to be my end. Instead, it's your mirror." The air thickened, heavy with what had landed. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some sneaking glances toward the door, desperate for escape from witnessing a family fracture. I stepped back, slid the papers into Mom's untouched glass of cranberries. "Merry Christmas," I whispered, not bitter this time, but irreversible. Then I turned, moving toward the door, boots carrying me through a draft of truth now woven into the walls. The front door groaned as I pulled it open. For a heartbeat, the house clung to me, its warmth, the chatter, the faint pine-scented candles. But none of it was mine. It never had been. Snow swept in, curling playful and cold around my ankles, reminding me the night was vast and open. Behind me, voices broke. Mom's strained plea, "Haven, wait. We can talk." Dad's sharp, brittle bark, "You'll regret this stunt." My sister's tearing voice, "Please don't leave it like this." I stopped on the threshold, one hand braced against the frame. For the first time, there was no shaking in me. Their words slid off, harmless, melting like snow against glass. I turned just enough to see them, all of their once perfect faces cracked by fear and disbelief. "I didn't burn this house down," I said softly. "I just stopped holding it up." A silence heavier than any storm settled. Guests remained, torn between sympathy and awe. Some met my eyes with quiet nods as if they understood. Others looked away, ashamed, remembering how they had laughed earlier when cruelty was dressed up as a joke. I stepped into the snow. The door shut behind me with a solid click. Outside, the world stretched crisp and untouched. Street lamps haloed the falling flakes, the air sharp and clean with freedom. For once, the cold didn't wound, it cleared. The papers pressed warm against my side, not proof of revenge alone, but reclamation. They had tried to script my downfall into humiliation. Instead, I left with the pen in my hand. I didn't need applause. I didn't need them to admit I was right. The quiet truth was enough. I had walked free without breaking myself. As I reached the corner, the church bells began to ring midnight. Christmas had arrived, not theirs, but mine. And with each toll, something inside me lightened, as though the snow itself whispered, "You are no longer theirs to diminish." I kept walking, carving footprints they would never be able to follow.